The artificial dawn cycle brought with it the harsh reality of Obsidian Station's daily routine. Marcus awakened to the sound of energy barriers crackling to life throughout the prison block as guards began their morning inspections. Beside him, Zephyra's crystalline form had dimmed to a soft pearl luminescence, the patterns across its surface moving in slow, meditative waves. The guard's approach, Zephyra communicated telepathically, its mental voice carrying undertones of weary familiarity. They conduct random searches, seeking contraband or signs of escape planning. We must appear resigned to our fate. Marcus nodded, understanding the necessity of deception. He had spent years perfecting the art of appearing defeated while maintaining inner resolve. The skill had served him well during previous captures, though none had been as dire as this situation. Commander Voss materialized before their cell, his imposing figure casting shadows across the containment area. The hegemony officer stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scaled skin bearing the deep crimson coloration that marked him as a member of the ruling warrior caste. Golden insignia adorned his uniform, testament to countless victories over rebellious worlds. The human appears to have survived his first night, Voss observed, his voice carrying the clinical detachment of a predator studying prey. Most newcomers require several days to accept their circumstances. Your rapid adaptation suggests either remarkable resilience or dangerous cunning. Marcus met the commander's gaze without flinching, allowing calculated defiance to show in his expression. I adapt quickly to new environments. It keeps me alive. Indeed. That adaptability served you well during your raids against our supply convoys. 7 successful operations before we finally cornered you on Titan Base. Voss stepped closer to the energy barrier, his amber eyes studying Marcus with professional interest. You cost us valuable resources and personnel. The High Command has specific plans for your eventual interrogation. Looking forward to it, Marcus replied with false bravado, while internally cataloging every detail of the commander's appearance and mannerisms for future reference. Voss turned his attention to Zephyra, whose patterns had shifted to neutral gray tones. And you, crystal aberration, continue your stubborn existence despite our best efforts to extract useful information from your kind. Perhaps witnessing your cellmate's eventual breakdown will provide motivation for cooperation. Zephyra remained silent, but Marcus felt waves of ancient anger radiating through their telepathic connection. The crystalline being had endured years of psychological torture, yet somehow maintained its core identity and principles. The commander departed, leaving them alone once more. Marcus waited until the sound of footsteps faded completely before speaking aloud. He mentioned 7 raids. That means they know about the supply depot operations but not the civilian evacuations on the outer rim colonies. Marcus began pacing the confines of their cell, his mind processing tactical implications. They have incomplete intelligence, which gives us an advantage. You continue to think like a military strategist even in captivity, Zephyra observed, its patterns brightening with what might have been admiration. But escape from this facility requires more than tactical knowledge. The station exists in deep space, surrounded by automated defense platforms and patrol fleets. Marcus paused his pacing, struck by a sudden realization. You said you could share memories and thoughts with willing participants. Could you extend that ability to other prisoners throughout the station? The range is limited by physical proximity and the strength of mental barriers, Zephyra explained, its form becoming more solid as it focused on the question. But yes, with sufficient effort, I could establish communication networks among receptive individuals. Then we start building a resistance network from within the prison itself. Marcus felt the familiar surge of purpose that had driven him through countless impossible missions. Every successful escape requires inside information, coordinated timing, and multiple contingency plans. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a new prisoner being processed into the adjacent cell. Marcus observed through the transparent aluminum partition as guards roughly deposited a woman who appeared to be human, though her clothing suggested a background quite different from military service. The newcomer possessed striking features that spoke of mixed heritage, her skin bearing the golden bronze tone common among the outer rim colonies. Her dark hair was cropped short in a practical style, and despite obvious signs of recent combat, she carried herself with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. As the guards departed, the woman turned toward Marcus and Zephyr's cell, her intelligent green eyes taking in their unusual partnership with barely concealed curiosity. "Well, this is interesting," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus recognized as originating from the Vega system colonies. "They told me I was being placed in maximum security, but they failed to mention the entertainment value." Marcus approached the partition separating their cells. "Marcus Sterling, formerly of the Terran Resistance Navy. This is Zephyra, who defies easy classification but makes excellent company." "Talia Vex," the woman replied with a sardonic smile. "Freelance cargo acquisition specialist, though the hegemony prefers the term smuggler. I was providing transportation services for refugee families when their patrol intercepted my ship." "Transportation services," Marcus repeated, recognizing the euphemism. "What kind of cargo capacity?" "Modified Kestrel-class frigate with enhanced stealth systems and expanded hold space. She could carry up to 200 passengers in emergency configuration." Talia's expression grew somber. "Could being the operative term. The bastards vaporized her after taking me prisoner." Zephyra extended its consciousness toward the adjacent cell, testing the boundaries of the containment field. "The barriers prevent physical contact but do not completely block telepathic transmission. I can sense strong emotions from our new neighbor." "What kind of emotions?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Grief for the loss of her vessel, anger at her capture, but underneath both of those, a burning determination for revenge." Zephyra's patterns shifted to deeper blue tones. "She is not broken by this experience. Like you, she plans to fight back." Marcus studied Talia through the partition, noting the way she methodically examined every aspect of her cell, testing the strength of walls and barriers with subtle pressure. Her movements possessed the fluid efficiency of someone accustomed to working in confined spaces under dangerous conditions. "You mentioned refugee families," Marcus said. "How many people were you helping to relocate?" "This run was small, only about 30 civilians from the Proxima settlements. But over the past 2 years, I estimate my network moved nearly 10,000 people away from hegemony expansion zones." Talia settled against the partition wall, positioning herself to maintain eye contact with both Marcus and Zephyra. "Most independent operators focus on high-value cargo that generates maximum profit per run. I found more satisfaction in preserving lives." "That explains why they brought you here instead of executing you outright," Marcus observed. "The hegemony wants intelligence about refugee networks and safe passage routes. They can want all they like. Some information is not for sale at any price." Talia's voice carried absolute conviction. "But I gather you two are not planning to spend the rest of your natural lives as guests of Commander Voss." Marcus glanced at Zephyra, whose patterns had shifted to warm amber and gold tones suggesting agreement. "We were discussing the theoretical possibilities of coordinated resistance activities among the prisoner population." "Theoretical, of course," Talia replied with a knowing smile. "And these theoretical activities would require what kind of theoretical resources?" "Access to station schematics, guard rotation schedules, location of critical systems, and some method of disabling security protocols." Marcus found himself impressed by Talia's quick understanding of the situation. Theoretical resources that would be extremely difficult to obtain under current circumstances. Zephyra's mental voice reached both humans simultaneously, causing Talia to start in surprise at the unexpected telepathic contact. "I can provide mental communication between willing participants and access to memories of station layouts observed during my time here. But physical resources must be acquired through other means." "Did that crystal just speak inside my head?" Talia asked, her expression shifting between amazement and concern. "Zephyra is telepathic, but only communicates with those who consent to mental contact," Marcus explained. "Think of it as a secure communication channel that the guards cannot monitor." Talia considered this information for several moments before nodding slowly. If we are going to work together, I need to understand the full extent of our capabilities and limitations. What other prisoners might be willing to participate in theoretical resistance activities? Over the following hours, they developed a comprehensive understanding of their situation. Zephyra provided detailed mental maps of the station layout, drawn from 3 years of careful observation. Talia contributed extensive knowledge of hegemony security protocols gained through years of evading their patrols. Marcus synthesized this information into preliminary strategic assessments. The artificial evening cycle found them deep in planning discussions. Marcus had moved closer to the partition separating his cell from Talia's, drawn by her quick intelligence and unexpected compassion for others. During their conversations, he had glimpsed the person behind the smuggler's facade, someone who had chosen a dangerous profession not for personal gain, but to help others escape oppression. The cargo bay maintenance schedule creates a 12-minute window every third day when that section operates on minimal security, Talia explained, her voice dropping to a whisper despite the privacy of their cells. If someone could reach the primary power distribution node during that window, they could theoretically create cascading system failures throughout the station. Theoretically, Marcus agreed, finding himself captivated by the way concentration brought out the golden flecks in her green eyes. But accessing that area would require passage through multiple security checkpoints and somehow avoiding automated surveillance systems. Unless, Zephyra interjected telepathically, we could coordinate the actions of multiple individuals simultaneously across different sections of the station. Distributed actions that individually appear harmless but collectively create the desired result. As they refined their plans, Marcus became increasingly aware of the connection developing between himself and Talia. Her combination of practical skills and moral conviction reminded him of the values that had driven him to join the resistance in the first place. More than that, her presence brought warmth to the cold environment of Obsidian Station. Marcus, Talia said softly as the lights dimmed for the night cycle, when we make our move, we are going to face situations where not everyone can be saved. Are you prepared for that reality? The question struck at the heart of Marcus's deepest fears. Every military leader faced moments when impossible choices had to be made, when the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. But the weight of those decisions never became easier to bear. I have made such choices before, Marcus replied honestly. They haunt me, but they also remind me why we fight. Every life we save justifies the cost of those we cannot. Then we understand each other, Talia said, her voice carrying profound relief. Too many resistance leaders become so focused on tactical victories that they forget the human cost of war. As sleep claimed the prison block, Marcus found himself thinking not just about escape plans and strategic objectives, but about the possibility of a future beyond the walls of Obsidian Station. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine what life might be like when the war finally ended, and whether that life might include someone who understood both his strengths and his burdens. In the adjacent cell, Talia Vex drifted towards sleep with similar thoughts, while in the crystalline depths of Zephyra's consciousness, the telepathic entity observed the growing emotional connection between its companions with something approaching hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and greater risks, but tonight they were no longer alone in their resistance against tyranny. Part 3, Revolution and Redemption. The dawn of the third week brought with it an unexpected development that would forever alter the trajectory of their carefully orchestrated plans. Marcus awakened to find Zephyra's crystalline form pulsing with urgent patterns of deep red and violet, the telepathic equivalent of alarm bells resonating through their mental connection. Emergency protocols have been activated throughout the station, Zephyra communicated with unprecedented intensity. High Chancellor Krex himself approaches Obsidian Station aboard the flagship Dominion. Commander Voss received orders to prepare all high-value prisoners for immediate transfer to the interrogation chambers. Marcus felt his blood turn cold at this revelation. High Chancellor Krex represented the absolute pinnacle of hegemony military authority, a being whose reputation for extracting information through psychological manipulation had become legendary throughout the galaxy. His personal involvement indicated that their resistance activities had attracted attention at the highest levels of enemy command. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, his mind immediately shifting into tactical assessment mode. The flagship will dock within 6 hours. Transfer protocols typically commence 2 hours after arrival to allow for security preparations. Zephyr's patterns shifted to deeper crimson tones. This represents our final opportunity to implement escape procedures. Any delay beyond this point will result in separation and individual interrogation under circumstances we cannot hope to survive. In the adjacent cell, Talia had already begun her own preparations, having overheard fragments of their telepathic communication through Zephyr's expanding mental network. Her movements possessed the fluid efficiency of someone accustomed to operating under extreme time pressure, checking hidden modifications to her clothing and testing the flexibility of seemingly ordinary accessories. "Marcus," she called softly through the partition, "I need to share something that changes our operational parameters significantly." "What kind of change?" Marcus asked, though the serious tone of her voice suggested information of considerable importance. "The refugees I was transporting during my final run included Dr. Helena Marsh, the xenobiologist who developed the prototype neural inhibitor technology. Before my capture, I managed to hide her research data in the ship's emergency beacon." Talia's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "That technology could theoretically disable hegemony control implants on a massive scale." Marcus understood the implications immediately. The hegemony maintained control over conquered populations through neural implants that suppressed resistance behaviors and enhanced compliance responses. Technology capable of neutralizing those implants would fundamentally alter the balance of power throughout their occupied territories. The emergency beacon would still be transmitting its location? Marcus asked, his tactical mind already processing the strategic possibilities. "Standard beacons maintain transmission for 30 days after activation. We have approximately 1 week remaining before the signal terminates." Talia moved closer to the partition, her green eyes reflecting determination mixed with desperate hope. "If we can escape and recover that data, we provide the resistance movements with a weapon capable of liberating entire worlds." Zephyr's mental presence expanded to encompass both human minds, sharing the weight of this revelation across their telepathic network. The magnitude of this opportunity demands acceptance of extraordinary risks. Success could save millions of lives across dozens of worlds. Failure ensures our deaths and the permanent loss of this knowledge. Marcus found himself facing the kind of decision that had defined his entire military career. The safe path involved focusing exclusively on their own escape, minimizing variables and maximizing their chances of individual survival. The strategic path required incorporating additional objectives that significantly increased the complexity and danger of their operation. "We go for both," Marcus declared with absolute conviction. "We escape Obsidian Station and recover the research data. The potential impact justifies the additional risks." "I was hoping you would say that," Talia replied, her smile visible even through the transparent partition. "Because I may have neglected to mention that the beacon's location is approximately 12 hours from here by standard transport, deep within contested space where both hegemony and resistance forces maintain active patrols." "Of course it is," Marcus said with grim humor. "Nothing worthwhile is ever easy to obtain." Their conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of heavy boots approaching through the corridor. Commander Voss appeared before their cells, accompanied by a full squad of armed guards and several technicians carrying specialized equipment that Marcus recognized as neural interrogation apparatus. "The High Chancellor honors us with his presence," Commander Voss announced with obvious satisfaction. "Preparations for enhanced interrogation procedures will commence immediately. You will each be relocated to individual chambers designed to optimize information extraction efficiency." Marcus met the commander's gaze with calculated defiance, allowing his expression to convey exactly the right mixture of fear and stubborn resistance. "Enhanced interrogation sounds delightful. I assume it includes refreshments and comfortable accommodations. Your humor will be short-lived, human. The High Chancellor possesses methods of persuasion that have broken the strongest minds in the galaxy." Voss gestured to his technicians, who began configuring their equipment with practiced efficiency. Beginning with the crystal aberration, whose telepathic abilities present unique opportunities for consciousness manipulation. The implication struck Marcus like a physical blow. If the hegemony could successfully extract information from Zephyr's mind, they would gain access not only to Resistance intelligence but to the telepathic entity's profound understanding of consciousness itself. Such knowledge could be weaponized in ways that threaten the fundamental nature of free will throughout the galaxy. Commander, one of the technicians reported, preliminary scans indicate unusual neural activity patterns among the prisoners. Recommendation suggests implementing isolation protocols before beginning transfer procedures. Voss considered this information with obvious suspicion. Specify the nature of these unusual patterns. Cross-cellular communication signatures consistent with coordinated planning activities. The subjects appear to have developed methods of information sharing that circumvent standard monitoring systems. Marcus felt Zephyr's mental presence intensify as the crystalline being prepared to implement their contingency plans. Throughout the prison block, other inmates who had joined their resistance network began receiving final instructions through carefully established telepathic connections. Initiate immediate transfer protocols, Commander Voss ordered. Separate the prisoners and implement full neural isolation before they can coordinate additional resistance activities. The energy barriers deactivated simultaneously as guards moved to secure each prisoner individually. This represented the moment Marcus had been preparing for throughout their weeks of planning. Success depended on precise timing and absolute coordination among dozens of participants across multiple sections of the station. Now, Marcus whispered, the single word serving as the activation signal for their entire operation. Zephyr's crystalline form erupted with brilliant luminescence that temporarily overwhelmed the visual sensors of nearby surveillance equipment. Simultaneously, the telepathic entity transmitted surge patterns that overloaded neural monitoring systems throughout the prison block, creating cascading failures in the station's security network. Marcus utilized the momentary confusion to implement close-quarters combat techniques specifically designed to neutralize armored opponents. His movements flowed with lethal precision as he disabled 3 guards within seconds, appropriating their weapons and communication equipment before they could raise an alarm. In the adjacent cell, Talia demonstrated why her reputation as a successful smuggler extended beyond simple cargo transportation. Her seemingly ordinary clothing contained hidden tools and weapons that transformed her from helpless prisoner to dangerous operative in the space of heartbeats. 2 guards fell before they realized the nature of the threat she represented. Throughout Obsidian Station, carefully positioned prisoners implemented simultaneous actions that individually appeared minor but collectively created systematic chaos. Power fluctuations cascaded through critical systems as maintenance personnel found themselves overwhelmed by seemingly unrelated equipment failures occurring across multiple sections. Security breach in maximum containment, Commander Voss shouted into his communication device, his voice carrying notes of disbelief and growing panic. All units converge on Prison Block 7. Implement lockdown protocols immediately. But the lockdown protocols themselves had been compromised through weeks of careful preparation. Zephyr's telepathic influence had gradually conditioned selected technicians to introduce subtle modifications to security programming, creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited at precisely this moment. Marcus reached Talia's cell as the partition barriers failed, their reunion marked by efficiency rather than sentiment. The hangar bay access route remains clear for approximately 8 minutes, he reported while distributing appropriated weapons. After that, automated systems will compensate for the current disruptions. Zephyra, Talia called to the crystalline entity, whose form had begun to stabilize after the massive energy expenditure required to disable monitoring systems. Can you maintain telepathic contact with our network during movement through the station? Range limitations will reduce communication effectiveness, but essential coordination should remain possible, Zephyr replied, its mental voice showing signs of strain from the sustained effort. However, prolonged use of these abilities while moving will significantly impact my capacity for physical defense. Marcus made the tactical decision immediately. I take point, Talia covers our rear approach, Zephyr maintains communication with other resistance elements. We move fast and direct toward the hangar bay. Their progress through Obsidian Station became a running battle against increasingly organized opposition. Commander Voss had recovered from the initial surprise and was systematically deploying security forces to contain the uprising. However, the distributed nature of their resistance network meant that guards found themselves responding to incidents throughout the facility simultaneously. "Hangar bay access in 30 seconds, Marcus reported as they rounded the final corridor. Ahead of them, massive blast doors stood partially open, revealing the docking area where various spacecraft awaited their appropriation. Their hopes were immediately complicated by the sight of High Chancellor Krex himself standing within the hangar, surrounded by an elite guard unit whose reputation for lethal efficiency was well established throughout the galaxy. The High Chancellor possessed the distinctive black scaling and silver insignia that marked him as a member of the hegemony's ruling bloodline. Marcus Sterling, the High Chancellor spoke with a voice that carried absolute authority. "Your escape attempt has been anticipated and prepared for. Surrender immediately, and your companions will be permitted to survive the experience." Marcus assessed their tactical situation with grim realism. The High Chancellor's guard unit consisted of 12 elite soldiers positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire throughout the hangar. Direct assault would result in their immediate destruction, while retreat meant certain capture as security forces closed in from behind. "Zephyra," Marcus said quietly, "how many of our people reached their assigned positions throughout the station?" 17 resistance cells achieved their objective successfully. "Critical systems throughout Obsidian Station are operating under compromised parameters," came the telepathic response. "However, the High Chancellor's forces appear to have prepared contingency measures that we did not anticipate." Talia moved closer to Marcus, her weapon trained on the nearest guard while she spoke in urgent whispers. "The research data becomes meaningless if we cannot survive to recover it. We need an alternative approach that does not involve direct confrontation with superior forces." The solution came from an unexpected source. Throughout their weeks of planning, they had focused primarily on escaping through conventional means while avoiding consideration of more dramatic alternatives. But Zephyra's unique nature provided possibilities that transcended normal tactical parameters. "High Chancellor," Marcus called across the hangar, his voice carrying respectful acknowledgement of their opponent's authority. "I request formal single combat to determine the fate of all prisoners involved in this escape attempt." The request clearly surprised Krex, whose expression shifted from confident authority to genuine curiosity. "Single combat? You believe your individual skills sufficient to challenge the supreme military authority of the hegemony?" "Not my skills alone," Marcus replied, stepping forward with calculated confidence. "I invoke the ancient right of champion selection. My chosen representative will face whatever champion you designate under traditional combat protocols." High Chancellor Krex considered this proposition with obvious interest. The ancient combat traditions provided legal frameworks that even supreme authority could not easily dismiss, particularly when witnessed by military personnel whose loyalty depended partly on respect for established customs. "Your champion?" Krex inquired, his gaze moving between Marcus, Talia, and Zephyra with analytical precision. Marcus turned toward his crystalline companion, whose patterns had begun shifting to brilliant silver and gold configurations. "Zephyra of the Crystal Reaches, last guardian of the luminous worlds, accepts the challenge on behalf of all who seek freedom from tyranny." The telepathic entity stepped forward, its form expanding and solidifying into a configuration that emphasized both its alien nature and inherent dignity. "I accept this responsibility and the consequences that follow." What transpired next would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the moment when the nature of consciousness itself became a weapon against oppression. Zephyra did not engage in physical combat but instead reached across the barriers of species and language to touch the minds of every being present in the hangar. Through telepathic connection, the High Chancellor's elite guards experienced the memories of worlds destroyed, civilizations extinguished, and countless lives sacrificed to maintain hegemony authority. They felt the weight of every order they had carried out, every family separated, every hope crushed beneath the machinery of conquest. High Chancellor Krex himself found his consciousness expanded beyond the limitations of individual perspective. For the first time in his existence, he experienced the universe through the awareness of those he had conquered, understanding the true cost of the empire he served. The transformation was not violent but profound. One by one, the elite guards lowered their weapons as the full implications of their actions became clear through shared consciousness. Several removed their helmets entirely, their expressions reflecting the profound change occurring within their understanding of purpose and duty. This is not victory through force, Zephyr communicated to every mind present, but revelation through understanding. Each consciousness possesses the capacity for choice between compassion and cruelty, between creation and destruction. High Chancellor Kreck stood motionless for long moments, processing experiences and perspectives that challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which his entire existence had been constructed. When he finally spoke, his voice carried tones of profound uncertainty. "Release them," he commanded his guards, though the order seemed directed more toward himself than his subordinates. "Release all prisoners throughout the station. What we have done cannot be undone, but what we do next remains within our power to choose." Marcus, Talia, and Zephyr found themselves free to depart Obsidian Station aboard one of the fastest vessels in the hangar. Their mission expanded beyond simple escape to include the recovery of research data that could liberate millions of minds throughout the galaxy. As their appropriated spacecraft accelerated away from the prison facility, Marcus reflected on the profound changes that a few weeks had brought to all their lives. His connection with Talia had evolved into something that transcended mere partnership, representing hope for a future where love could flourish even amid the chaos of war. Behind them, Obsidian Station underwent its own transformation as former prisoners became free beings and former guards grappled with newfound understanding of their role in perpetuating oppression. The revolution they had begun extended far beyond physical escape to encompass the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The coordinates for Dr. Marsh's research beacon beckoned ahead of them, promising the tools necessary to extend this liberation throughout hegemony space. But more than tactical objectives, their journey represented the triumph of connection over isolation, understanding over hatred, and hope over despair. In the vast darkness of space, three unlikely companions flew toward an uncertain but hopeful future, their bond proving that the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies but from transforming them into allies through the simple recognition of shared consciousness and common humanity. The galaxy would never be the same.